Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, really glad you joined us. Hope you like what you hear. So, our guest today is Anthony DeNino. Anthony has a leadership business, a keynote speaking business, a training business, all one business, just to be clear, but he focuses on all these subjects. So, coaching, leadership, training, and mindset. So, super excited to bring him on. He's going to talk about some programs he's developed that he's had success with, not only with himself, but with personal coaching clients, with business coaching clients. Going to talk about a book that he wrote on gratitude. Going to talk about his philosophy on integrity and how important it is to him to teach people to do the right thing and to kind of lead with integrity. And so, super excited about bringing Anthony on. Without further ado, let's bring him onto the channel right now. So, Anthony, welcome to Salty Ginger Talk. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Joe, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we had Anthony, I had a great conversation over a month ago now, and been looking forward to bringing him on. On the podcast, we talk a lot about taking control of your life and making deliberate choices to set up the kind of life that you want. Anthony's been in that field a long time. He's written a book. He's got a couple of really, I think, his message is great, and he's got some really specific things to kind of talk through to help you if you're struggling on how to start on that or how to put that together. And so I think we're going to have a great conversation around those things. And I think you'll be very, very pleased with what you're able to learn from Anthony's breadth of knowledge on the subject. So really appreciate having you on.
Yeah, and thank you for the build up. I hope I can live up to that.
Do your best. Do your
All
best.
right.
That's always good enough, right? Just do your best. So yeah, what we usually like to do is just have you start like back at the very beginning, not necessarily the business that you have now in terms of speaking
Yeah.
and coaching and author. And I know you spent quite a bit of time in the corporate world, and would love to hear just kind of how you worked your way through there, because there's good stuff in there, both good stuff from the good stuff that happened and good stuff you learned from the shitty stuff that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, so essentially before I started my company in 2014, I had worked 25 years in the corporate world. Worked for some larger companies, some mid-sized companies, and smaller companies, essentially in various sales and management, marketing, kind of customer service roles. Uh, like I said, had the opportunity to get a kind of a vast background working in everything from professional baseball to a videography company to pharmaceuticals. So done ever since I graduated college. I had always had the desire to do something on my own.
Mm.
And I played around, started a little company here and there a couple of years or a few years back, actually. But it was always under the guise of working for another company while I was doing it. And I was never, some people are able to do it, to do both, more power to them. But I was never able to dive headlong into my company because I always felt that obligation to the company that had entrusted me and is paying me very well. And so, yeah, all that said, ultimately in 2014, I said enough's enough and finally, ventured out on my own.
Love that. Yeah. And look, I get what you're saying. I appreciate you kind of underscoring the point. I'm all for side hustles. And like
Sure.
I do the podcast because I love doing the podcast. My real job, I'm the CEO of a company that owns and operates stores, grocery stores in Chicago. And I do the podcast nights and weekends because I absolutely, have a responsibility to our shareholders and all our employees. And like you can't forsake your actual responsibilities for your passion projects. Now, it's great if you can build your passion projects up so that they support you. And that's where you got into, which is awesome.
Sure.
But I love you underscoring that point, because I think there's a lot of folks doing the side hustle, and you don't want to cheat your employee or your employer or your people while you're doing your thing. So you got to figure out a way to make both of those work at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And, not to prop myself up because there are a lot of people who feel that way. And
mm,
to me, that just kind of ties back to integrity and trying to do things the right way. That's something that's always been important to me as an individual, spreading on out through, college and then, into the professional world. But, for me, both now and even back then, my name is everything. And when you hear my name, I want people to associate that with good, positive thoughts and not those kind of thoughts of like, I don't know about this
Mm,
guy. I want it to be real and authentic in the process as well.
totally. So you're working your way through the corporate world. What about that lifestyle was unsatisfying for you?
Honestly, it was a lack of passion. I always gave the companies I worked for, my full and best efforts. But there wasn't anything in here, with the exception of one job. I referenced earlier that I was in professional baseball. As you and I touched on about a month or so ago, we're both baseball nuts and junkies. We both played. Um, I played a couple of years in college, was as far as I'd gotten. But so for me to actually work in that field afterwards, it was just nirvana for me at the
Mm,
time. But really, aside from that opportunity, which ultimately had me working 16, 18-hour days with a newborn and an 18-month-old, that all those responsibilities fell on my wife. It was time for me to move on, and mistakenly or not, I went for a little more money and but better hours to be home and to be able to enjoy my kids as well as give my wife a break.
yeah, for sure. And yeah, like if you're not able to really buy into what it is you're doing, you're
Yeah,
only going to do so good of a job. And there's lots of us out there. It's funny because I had a loss prevention manager early in my career, and I've been in the grocery business for 30 years, but a loss prevention
yeah,
manager kind of explained group dynamics to me, and it just resonated with me ever since. And this had to be 30 years ago, but he said, look, anytime you get a large group of people, it's going to break down into three groups. There's 10% at the top, and they're always going to do the right thing no matter what, because that's just how they are. And then there's
right.
10% at the bottom, and they're never going to do the right thing no matter what you do, because that's just how they are. And then there's the
Yeah,
80% in the middle, and they're going to follow one of those two groups. And your job as a leader is to uh, get that 80% to follow the top 10 and not the bottom 10. Also, identify the bottom 10 and try to get them out the door.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with that. Yeah, most people, fall into that category of, they're working, they want to do a good job. Maybe they're passionate about it, maybe they're not. So as the leaders you reference, it falls on your shoulders to help to build those people up, to kind of find out where their passion lies, to communicate. Communication. You show me any successful company and nonprofit out there, I'm going to show you one that communicates effectively, not just amongst leaders, but with their employees as well. So to be able to have that dynamic and establish those boundaries and work with that 80%, man, if you're able to turn even half of them, around closer to the top 10, you're in great shape.
Yeah, well, and it's funny to hear you talk about that because that's essentially what you've gone into business to do, right? Is to
Yeah.
influence that middle group of people. So let's talk a little bit about that. How did you determine you're in the corporate world? You said you started something and it kind of whatever, it didn't come to fruition or it wasn't what you wound up doing. So how did you decide to go down the path you're on now? What was that kind of tipping point? What was your moment of inflection there?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it actually happened totally by accident. I was with a pharmaceutical company in a sales role, and we had a particularly frustrating district meeting. And it was frustrating because the company just spent billions of dollars on a study to finally prove that our drug was going to be superior to the ones that all the doctors were writing, and it fell flat. It
Mm,
was proved to be no better or no worse. Plus, we also had a multi-billion-dollar drug go off, go to generic.
yep.
So as you can imagine, as sales reps and a district manager, it was tough to kind of stay motivated at that time. So my boss, the last day of the meeting, he did something that I'm so thankful for. He said, "Okay, I need two volunteers. And I'm just naive enough to say, sure, I'll I'll go. I'll try it. He didn't say for what. I just said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And he took me and this other woman out in the hallway who volunteered. And he basically said, look, this meeting's been horrible. Nobody's excited. Nobody's motivated. I need you guys to speak for, I don't know, maybe about 15 minutes and, kind of get people excited again about what we have and what we could do going out the door. So, yeah, we looked at each other and said, okay, we're going to start planning. And I'll never forget this. He walks away from us. He puts his hand on the door to go back into the meeting room. And then at that point stops, turns around and says, oh, by the way, you have 5 minutes to come up with something.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. So, as I tell people, we did the best we could in terms of planning and preparing. She said her part. I went on, I did my part. And, like I said, it's not like people were doing cartwheels and giving high fives after I spoke, but I said to myself, I was like, that was pretty awesome. That was a lot of fun. And ultimately, I approached my boss, who approached his boss, about speaking more in a prepared way to our region. And ultimately, I became a regional speaker for the company. And that's really what lit the fire under me. But it wasn't until, about 5 years later that I ultimately went out on my own, did some private stuff on the side, but it lit the passion. And to see, during that time, the 5 year process, to see how people reacted and to realize the power that not just me, but anybody in that position has to influence people and to do it in a positive way, that was it. That told me, this is what I need to do. I need to work to try to help people, to try to make a difference, to improve humanity, And thankfully, it's like I said, it's been 11 years now, so we're very excited about that.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's funny. We have we're fortunate. We attract really high caliber guests on our podcast, and you're certainly no exception. And
Thank you.
so it's a lot of folks that kind of think and say, what am I doing? Is it making a difference? And if it's not, what can I do to make a difference? And we find so many of them that wind up going down these paths completely by accident. Like there was no
Yeah,
intention about winding up there, but it's a very, very common theme we see in all of our guests. And the other thing that goes with that is action, right? So they
absolutely.
don't they don't think about it. I'm not saying I shouldn't say that. That's not the right way to say it. They don't intentionally plan it and say, I'm going to wind up over there. They start taking action and follow a path that is kind of exposed to them through those actions. And that's kind of what you just described. And we see it over and over and over again with our guests. They wind up in a really good spot because they're willing to take some risks, because they're willing to take a shot, because they're willing to risk rejection and failing and trying and uh, sticking with it until they succeed. So I love the message behind that.
Yeah, no, yeah, thanks. And you know how they say there's no perfect time to start a family. I kind of feel it's kind of that way with the business as well. Although I will say I quite possibly picked the worst possible time to start because we had a daughter who just graduated high school and was going to an out of state school, which the cost just skyrockets, and it was Clemson University, so out of state. I'm in North Carolina. Was quite the added expense. Um, so all of a sudden, the fear and the panic set in. Holy mackerel! I don't have a job that says I've been here for years. Are we going to get approved for aid? And this has been a dream. And have I just ruined it? And so it's just a lot of angst that went along during that time period. But thankfully, somehow God, who knows, it got us through it, and we're able to grow from there.
Yeah, it's funny because anyone that's ever started a business has stories like that. I knew some guys, and I'm not, I don't do business with them anymore just because I'm in a different spot in the business now, not because we had any falling out or anything, but they started a brokerage in the food business, and they went out on their own, and they were telling me the story of how they started it. And they just remember, their first day they rented office space, and they couldn't afford to buy their furniture yet, so they
Mm,
literally had boxes and were sitting on boxes and working on windowsills. And they were very
sure.
successful at the time I was dealing with them. But just like you just described, it was a lot of nail biting and kind of rocking in the basement, like, oh my God, did I make a good decision? Am I going to make it through this or not?
Right. Right.
Um,
The thing about that is, if I had realized that ahead of time, I probably, I don't know that today I'd still be, with a company, but it would have been another 4 years that I would have
yeah.
been quite possibly not very happy with what I was doing. And it doesn't sound like that firsthand, which, kudos to you for that. But there are a lot of people out there who feel like they have to be in a certain role, and, they have to do this and they have to do that. And while there's a lot of good intentions behind that, in terms of, hey, you know what, this job pays me a lot, so I could afford this, even though they're miserable inside. Well, there's a lot of good intention, though. It's, for me anyway, I can only speak about myself. It wasn't the way I wanted to be. I thought like everybody else who's listening, deserves to be happy in what they're doing with their life. So if there's a dream and a goal, and you make some preparation and don't think too hard, you too can have your dream, and to accomplish your dream. And as I say, with my company name, Core Creating Our Reality, to create your reality. What is it that you want out of life? What is it that you want to be? How do you want to influence? Do you want to influence? Maybe you're just happy just doing something very quiet, very much on the down low. Fantastic. If that's you, if that's what speaks to you, that's the direction for you to go.
Yeah, that's right. There's no judgments on this thing. No one is
Yeah,
higher or lower value because of what they choose to do for their profession. And I think you got to know who you are. It's funny because, like, I, as a kid, even from like, I've always been wired this way to kind of kick indoors and, hey, I'll take it on. I'm not afraid of that. And that can be good and that can be bad. Like, I wind up in rooms, a lot of people just walk past. I'm like, son of a bitch, I shouldn't have kicked in that door. This is a hellhole in here, So it brings its own set of negative consequences for sure. But
yeah,
that's who I am. I know that's who I am. I would not be happy sitting at the back and hoping that somebody else was making good decisions. When I went through college on a baseball scholarship, and I was the closer the last 2 years, not
mm,
because I had the best stuff. There was always guys on the staff that had a couple more miles an hour on the fastball or a little more bite on the curveball or whatever. But when you put the combination of the stuff I had in my mentality, I was the right guy to do it because I wasn't afraid of
yeah,
it. And
yeah,
it's hard. It's not easy, especially the day after you failed, because as a closer, it's not uncommon to have to throw 3, 4 days in a row. And if you get touched up the day before, you got to have a short memory, because less than 24 hours later, you could be facing the same guy that caused you problems the night before and in the same situation. Like, you got to get this guy out if you want to win the game. And
yeah,
you can't be afraid of past failures. You just got to learn from them, compartmentalize them, and use those learnings to try to be successful the next time you go out. And I was fortunate to do that because those lessons translate perfectly into the real world. It helps you be a better husband, a better father, a better leader in business, all of
yeah,
those things. So I know that's who I am. So I've had to learn to deal with the downsides of that too, which is don't get a lot of rest sometimes, and it's a lot of pressure sometimes. It's a lot of criticism
sure,
sometimes, and that's okay. It is what it is.
yeah. Well, the closer's role will definitely set you up for that success down the line. And here's the thing, about failing. It, I really don't. I really try not to use that word anymore. I failed, or definitely not. I'm a failure, right? Nobody's a failure. You may not do things as successfully as you want to do them, but that does not make you a failure. But the reason I don't like using that word anymore is because of perspective.
Mm,
Perspective is one of my favorite words, and basically the perspective of, I'll say, failing right now. The perspective of failing that I take is that, you know what? It's not that I failed. Things didn't go like I wanted them to. However, this is an opportunity. There's an opportunity to learn. there's an opportunity to grow, and there's an opportunity to make sure the next time I'm in this situation, like you with a closer, right? I'm going to be better equipped to succeed. And it might happen a time or two where you don't, another time or two. But as long as you get stronger, as long as there's that improvement, and as long as there's that attention to making sure that you go forward in a positive way, that's a win. And so many people, and I had been guilty of it for a long time. We get so wrapped up in that particular moment and that instance,
Mhm.
when in reality our lives are made up of a lot of those moments. Some of them have greater attention than others, but if you go at it from the mindset of, hey, you know what a great opportunity, I'm going to do my best, I'm going to put everything I have into this, and ultimately I plan on coming out on top. If not, I'll be disappointed, and that's okay, right? It kind of motivates you to do better next time. But if not, I'm going to put everything I have into it for the next opportunity.
Yes, totally. Totally love that. Totally agree with the message there. And so you'd referenced, so you're creating our reality is the
Yeah.
business you started. Talk a little bit about what you do in your business.
Sure, sure. Well, if we were at a networking meeting and I had my 30 seconds, to tell everybody what it is I would do, that official answer is that I inspire dreams. I inspire inspiration, and I inspire. Can we do that again? Sorry,
Sure. No, go ahead. Just
I
start
got to
over.
mess up my own 30-second thing.
No problem. So James will cut that out. Go ahead and start over. No
Thanks,
big deal.
James. Yeah, so if we were in a meeting right now, what I would say to you is I inspire creation, the creation of ideas, the creation of dreams, and the creation of people's reality. And I accomplish this through my keynote speaking, my leadership and employee training that I conduct, my consulting work with businesses and nonprofits. I also offer the services of one-on-one consultations. I'm a mental performance coach. So these are the things that drive me, and these are the areas of my business. Now, in this format, we're having a conversation. I'll tell you, look, I just love what I do because I get to impact people, and and my goal always is to impact people in a positive way. And what I've been fortunate enough to be able to do over the years is to be a keynote speaker, to speak in small groups of 10 or 12 people, but also hundreds and even more of groups of people. And it is just a passion for me, Joe. It's something that I enjoy the heck out of. But I go by the moniker of the smart guy, and oftentimes when I say that, I get exactly that reaction. But SMART's an acronym, and in all sincerity, it's at the heart and soul of what I believe, not just as a speaker, not just as a professional, but really as a person. And it stands for success means acquiring right thoughts. Because I fully believe that with the right way of thinking, you will create your reality. But the thing about it is, and that's how I used to say it actually. But what I come to realize over the years is that it's so much more than just your thoughts. So what I tell people in a talk, or really just in a conversation sometimes, there are 4 elements to being smart. One, first and foremost, is having that positive mindset. But the second one involves your feelings and emotions. And what I mean by that is, and I'll tie it back to baseball, as a closer, or I'll do me as a hitter, right? I'm thinking, okay, what is that feeling when I'm up bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, and I get that game-winning hit? So I get that feeling, that emotion, that high, that excitement, not only for myself, but I see my teammates, very excited and give me high fives, and when I had hair, messing up my hair, and all this good kind of stuff, right? So it's being smart also is about having that feeling, that emotion, and actually seeing that success. So visualization is a huge part. Third, and this is one where people struggle, it's about speaking in that positive way. Now, what the reason people struggle is like myself earlier on, I don't want to sound cocky. I don't want to sound like a conceited jerk. I don't want to, I just don't want to be that. I'm kind of just me, and I'm kind of humble. And I think that's great. But there's a difference between, and if I can, I'm just going to play out a little role here, role play. So if you were to ask me, hey, Anthony, how do you feel about, going on the show today? And if I said to you, well, Joe, yeah, I feel pretty good. Yeah, I think it's going to go well, and I anticipate, we'll have some good conversation, and I hope by the end that it plays well and people like it, right? It's not a bad answer,
Mm.
right? But what I've done, when I say stuff like that, I think and I hope, right? It's a huge difference between saying something like, "Hey, Joe, you know what? I'm super excited to be on your show today. I feel confident it's going to go well. I've been doing this for 11 years now, over 11 years now, and I have a good message to give. And my part of what I feel my job is to help people and to inspire them to be better and to be more. So by the time the show ends, I anticipate walking away feeling really good about it. I don't think that sounded cocky, and tell me if you feel otherwise. But it was more of an affirmation of, hey, this is the way it's going to go down. And so I really think speaking positively is the third step of the four, and the last one is the most important. If you do the first three and you do them perfectly, that's fantastic. But if you don't take action to put yourself in that position to succeed, you could think and feel and speak, as positively as you want. But if you don't take action and set yourself up for success, it's not going to work out quite the way you feel. So those are my elements of being smart.
I love that. So I've got a couple of anecdotes that tie into the third and fourth
Yeah.
principle you talked about. On the third principle, in terms of positive speaking and positive thinking. So in my 30s, I played in an adult baseball league, and
Me too, by the way.
yeah, I loved it. I had a great time.
Yeah.
And I pitched most of the time because I was, like I said, I was a pitcher in college, and I just was good at getting guys out. But I didn't pitch every game. And the other guy that pitched on our team was on the mound one time, and I think I was playing first base if I remember right. And he had a full count on a guy. For those listeners not familiar with baseball, it means 3 balls, 2 strikes, and the next pitch, something's going to happen. He's either going to walk because you get 4 balls, you're awarded first base, or he's going to put it in play, or he's going to strike out. But it's called the payoff pitch because something's got to give when that
Right.
happens. And one of our fielders said, "Don't walk this guy, Keith, to the pitcher." And Keith did a good job. He threw a slider and got the guy out, and he came back to the bench and he said, "Hey, don't say right before I throw a pitch, don't walk this guy." And a couple guys on the
Love it.
team were pitching shit on him. And I said, no, I'm 100% with Keith on this. If
Yeah.
you want to say something, say strike this guy out. Like it's the same thing, but one has a very positive connotation and one has a
Right.
very negative connotation. So right before you're getting to perform, you don't want one of your teammates to put a negative thought in your head. So Keith's
Absolutely.
100% right. Think about how you say it. And
Yeah.
it matters. I don't care if you think it matters or not. I know it matters. It just matters, you know?
No doubt. And there's so much negativity around us already. Can't we, in your story's case, can't we on the ball field just go at it from that positive approach, right? And just feel better and feel good about yourself and what you're trying to do. So that's a great story.
Yes. And then on the take action one, like it's all window dressing if you don't put it into action. So in my career, I ran a group that was responsible for cutting costs out of the company I was at. It was a huge company. We had like 60 facilities, and we just looked for opportunities. And I had this super smart group of kids, and I call them kids because they were all 20 years younger than me. We got along great. They did stuff technology wise that I couldn't ever do. However, they would put together these great reports and these, awesome data analytics, and they would identify these great opportunities. And my question was always, great, what are you doing about it? And
Mm.
that made him really uncomfortable. So it was kind of the first time I got exposed. This was back in the, I don't know, it would have been like 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. And first time I kind of got exposed to, a younger generation younger than me that had a different
Mm.
mindset. Because, I'm
Yeah.
53, and that was just kind of how it was. Every boss I worked for was the evil boss,
Yeah.
that they put in movies. It was like, get your shit done. And so that was just like the expectation. We got along great, but I couldn't do what they did, and they couldn't do what I did. So we had this guy, we had this guy. He identifies a way to turn doors faster in a facility, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it literally could save us millions of dollars a year if we could get trucks in and out of this facility faster.
Mm.
And
Okay.
it was brilliant. It was a great idea. It was a great find. And I said, so like, what are you doing about it? And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, it's it doesn't mean a goddamn thing if we don't implement it at the facility. How are we going to implement it at the facility? He's like,
Right.
I don't know. That's what the facility guys do. I'm like, no, we got to go down and teach them.
Yeah.
I said, have you called Dennis yet? The guy that ran this warehouse. He was a great guy. I got along with him really well after we got to know each other. But he was one of those guys that had a lot of shit to do. He didn't fuck around. And like, if he bought in, he'd get it done. But if he didn't think it had merit, he would tell you right to your face, that's fucking stupid. Like he was that kind of guy.
Yeah.
And so
Sure.
I have no problem. I have no problem dealing with those kind of guys. And so I'm like, did you call Dennis? He's like, well, Dennis will yell at me. I'm like, yeah, Dennis will yell at you. I don't care. Like, better yet, book us plane tickets and you and me will go down there together. I'll show you how to do this. And so we book the trip, we get down there and we walk into a room and Dennis has like all his supervisors in the room. And I shook his hand and I said, Dennis, thank you for taking the time to meet with me. And he looked right at me in front of all these people. And he said, did I have a choice? Just like that. And I'd never met him before. I'd never met him before in my life. And I said, nope, but I really appreciate it anyways. And
Yeah.
so it was like a little bit of you're right. I outrank you. You have to do what I say. However, like
Yeah.
we both bring a lot of value here. And so I walked him through. We're like, look, here's how it works. And he's like, oh, well, that would save us a ton of time. I said, yes, that's why we're here. We want to show you how to do this. He said, well, let's get
Sure.
to it. And boom, it flowed like magic. The kid that came across it, I gave him all the credit because he came up with it. And
Right.
I said, you can't be afraid of people. You have to have conversations that you're afraid of if you're going to get things done. And to your point, it's all window dressing if you're not taking action on it. So you can
Yeah.
write down all your lofty goals and put together your vision boards. And I believe in all those things. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
dismiss those things when I say it like that.
Absolutely.
They don't mean anything until you do something.
Yeah. Yeah. And you brought up something that kind of resonated with me, and that's younger generations, right? I'm actually a little bit older than you are. And one of the things that I really, really enjoy doing in trainings is to talk about that generational gap. Yeah, I call it, I in my title, I'll say something like, are you multilinguistic? And it's not that you may speak French and Italian and Spanish and English. It's, can you speak, Gen Z? Can you speak millennial?
Right.
Can you, all this, right? Because each of our generations, we have different, a little bit, nuanced ways of doing things and relating to things. And within that time, we'll not only talk about it, but I do this one exercise, and every time it just kind of kills because people get an appreciation. And I basically have two people back to back, and sitting back to back, and I try to make sure they're of a different age, maybe a different ethnicity, male versus female, just totally opposite.
Yep.
And I'll have one person with a picture. Let's say it's a baseball field. And I'll tell that person, you have to describe what you see in this picture, and the other person has to draw it. But you can't say it's a baseball field with four bases and a pitcher's mound. You have to find a different way to explain what you're looking at. And then obviously that person draws based on that explanation. And the reason I do that is because I want people to understand that what is common sense and an easy way for you to speak isn't always the way that the other person hears it. So you have to find different ways to communicate and get your message across. And like I said, thankfully we've had some good success with that and some good reactions in the process.
I love those. Yeah, it reminds me very much of the $100,000 pyramid. You remember? I mean, we're so
Oh
old. We
yeah,
remember it was. We're so old. Remember when Dick Clark ran it? It was $25,000 pyramid because that was a lot of
that's
money
right.
back in the '70s,
Inflation,
right?
gotta love it.
Exactly. But the object of that show is the person gets a clue. It's kind of like password basically,
Right.
but the person gets a clue and you have to get the other person to guess the clue without saying the word. And
Mm,
so like if the word was picnic, okay, so you go out and lay down a cloth and you eat it at lunch in the park. Picnic.
right.
Okay, then you get the next word. But yeah,
Yeah.
I love those. I love those
Yeah, that
kind
was
of
a great show.
exercises. Yeah, because they it really illustrates we've all been guilty of this. I always say I don't throw stones because I live in a glass house. So
Yeah.
I try not to be critical too much because I screw up enough stuff on my own. I don't like when people are critical of me, so I try not to do it to other people. But
Sure.
I've been guilty of assuming that the knowledge that I have, either somebody else has it or it's easy for them to understand it in the way that I explain it. And I think one of the reasons I've been successful in my career is because I'm better than the average person at making things make sense
Yeah.
um, in different environments. So I'm very comfortable in a boardroom talking to executives who want to talk numbers and finance and business strategy. And I'm still very comfortable on a receiving dock talking to guys who want to turn trucks and put away boxes and run forklifts and get their stuff done on time. And being able to communicate to those various different groups of people is a real
Yeah.
skill. And I didn't realize it was a real
Yeah.
skill. It's a real skill that I have. And I find it very useful for me.
Yeah, yeah, good for you. That's an important skill set to have. I remember, just starting out. I remember, doing a number of different workshops and talks, and I'd always come home and I would tell my wife about it, and I'd say, I just can't believe that they don't know this, whatever we're talking about, and it's just basic and it's one-on-one stuff, and I kind of forgot, for the longest time, I was like, hold it, it's taken me how many decades to learn this? And these people are, 22, 25 or whatever. So in a way, it's kind of cool because it makes me look like a genius in a lot of cases, which I'm not. But, but, it's again, like I said earlier, the perspective and the way that you look at it. But yeah, it is a challenge and it is a gift to be able to, like you said, get in that boardroom and speak at that high level, but also get down and whatever the lowest position of the company is that you're working with, help them to understand just how important their role is because it truly is.
Yep.
But a lot of times, we get caught up in the negative aspect of it. Oh, I'm just this, and oh, I'm just that. No, you're doing this role, but you're far more than your role. And just helping people understand that, I think, is something I love because you just see like the light bulb, go off and like, hey, yeah, thanks for saying that. They're just really appreciative about it because, unfortunately, typically they don't get a lot of that. Again, the good
Yeah.
companies and the leaders like yourself, they'll make sure that they do, but in a lot of cases, people don't.
Well, I'm such a huge advocate too of kind of the trades and retail and the jobs that are considered blue collar because those are the jobs that make our country run. And
Mm-hmm.
those are not easy jobs. I think there's a lot of people that kind of look down their nose at them and
Yeah,
don't look, I got a degree in finance. I've been in that world, blah, blah, blah. I've been in the blue collar world too. I was raised very blue collar. My family didn't have money.
yeah,
And I've had a job since I was 12 years old. I started off mowing lawns and washing trucks, but I've consistently been employed for the last 40 years of my life. So I know how to work. I know what it's
yeah.
like.
Yeah, no,
Um,
no doubt, and I'm not ashamed to say, during the time that I've owned my business, I've had to take part-time jobs. I took one at FedEx for like I don't know, 4 or 5 month period. It's all I could take, but I was getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning and working 3:30 till whatever 7:30, 8:30, 9:30, then coming
yep.
home and being the CEO of my company. So, but you do what you have to do, and it didn't make me any less of a person for having to do that. Yeah, there was the frustration on my part, to be honest. Like, I shouldn't be in this position. But you quickly learn that you get put in these positions for reasons, and you just have to kind of trust and go along with that. I'm big into spirituality, so I'm big into that trust and the universe, and like you referenced earlier, and vision board stuff like that. But yeah, you just have to trust and just let go sometimes.
Yeah, and I think if you're doing the work, things will take care of it. You'll figure it out if you're doing the work. Where you get, I think where people get in trouble is when they like I did. It's funny, you've talked about a couple of things that really resonated with me. One of them is vocabulary. And we
Mhm.
published a podcast episode earlier this week on 5 words you should eliminate from your vocabulary. One of those words is should. Like I
Mm,
hate the word should.
yeah,
That I should be further along. I should go to the gym. I should whatever. Like, could you be
right.
more non-committal? Be a little more non-committal for me, would you? Like, that's not a commitment. That should is should be out of your vocabulary. It just you should get rid of that word 100% because you're either expecting something to be handed to you or you're saying life isn't fair. And correct, life's not fair. Welcome to life. Deal with it. It's not ever gonna be fair. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's you know,
No, no doubt. And I'm about transparency. I went through that myself,
sure.
Here I am on one hand speaking about, mindset and positive, and on the other hand, it's like, oh, I shouldn't have to do this, or I should do this, or I should be at this level by now. And, thankfully, and it took a while, admittedly, but thankfully, it's like, no, this is where I'm at. And now it's a matter of just, putting forth the effort like you have been, trusting a little bit more, and things will work out. And thankfully, and I owe a lot of that personally. I'm big into meditation. So yeah, that's just huge for me.
Well, and that's a really good segue here. You work both with people one on one and in groups.
Correct.
What are some of the most common issues you try to coach people on? Like, let's just start with mindset. What are some of
Yeah.
the mindset traps you see people struggle with that you help them resolve?
Yeah. Well, first thing, even though I'll start off typically talking about mindset, with individuals and with groups, for me, that kind of comes back to confidence. And what I find in a lot of cases, regardless of what your position is, you're just not confident.
Mm,
That person that's sitting across from me or sitting, in the big group, just not confident. Yeah, they put on a great, front, as a lot of us do, right? We put on great fronts sometimes. But when you get down to the nitty gritty of it, what I've often discovered is that it's kind of like, in their minds they're this little girl or this little boy, and they're lost, and they call it imposter syndrome, and what am I doing here, and I shouldn't be doing this. And I'm like, hold on, you were chosen for this role. You were chosen for this role because you've done A, B, C, and D along the way to get there. Feel good about that. Feel good about who you are, about what you've done. And yeah, maybe you're not today, the boss or the leader that you want to be, but you continue to work hard, you continue to learn, and before you know it, with that consistent effort, you're going to be exactly where you need to be. Not so much necessarily where you want to be, but where you need to be during that time. And I can't tell you the number of times where, I'll have people, kind of sit and listen to me at first, kind of, skeptical. And all of a sudden they start rising up, and all of a sudden, like, yeah, you're exactly right. So, it's kind of a cool thing for me on the other side of that table, seeing that light bulb go off. I just had a situation here yesterday where I met with a potential client, and he's explaining to me, the challenges that his company is having right now. And you could just tell from his body language, from his tone, and I know him a bit outside of this meeting, so I could tell anyway from his body language and his tone, and just the way he was delivering, his messages. I'm like, yeah, time out here. I said, one thing I want you to realize before you go any further is where you're at today versus where you started. Yeah, I
Mm.
let them know. I said, you're employing all these people. You're doing your business in 4 states, and you're largely doing it on the strength of you and your efforts. Yeah, there's always going to be challenges, but don't forget about what got you to this point and use that as a springboard going forward. So again, back to your original question, yeah, to me, it's about either reminding people or helping build their confidence in what they're doing.
Yeah. And it's funny because you can't fake confidence. Bravado is easily seen through.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of I love the quote that says it takes a lot of courage to stand up and speak your mind. It takes just as much courage to sit down, shut your mouth, and listen.
No
And
doubt.
I in trainings or in classes, I'm a pretty quick study. I usually pick up on things pretty quick. I did well in school and I just figure stuff out fast. But what I'll do if I'm in something new or something complex, I'll look around the room and just go, these people are not getting this. They don't get it. And when the speaker says, "Do you have any questions?" I personally will say, "Hey, look, I guess I'm an idiot because I don't have any idea what you just said. Like I am
Yeah.
totally lost. Can
Yeah.
you please walk through this like I'm 5 years old? Because I'm not
Yeah.
getting it." And I don't do that for me, but
Right.
like I want to take that onus off. I want people to get the training and I want them to learn. So I got
Yeah.
no problem looking like the jackass that can't figure things out as long as everybody gets what they need. You know what I mean? And to me,
Yeah.
that's leadership and that's getting people what they need to help be successful. And that's
Yeah.
confidence. It takes confidence to do those things, right?
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I've done something similar in my past where, um, as an employee, might have my boss or a leader of the company step up and say, all right, so we need ideas. Throw out some ideas to me. And people sit quietly. Either they're not sure, they don't have ideas, or like, oh, I don't want to be the first. And finally, I just got to the point where, well, look, I know I don't have a good idea, but I'm going to throw something out because once somebody throws something out, somebody's going to chime in and say, well, I don't like that part of it, but here's what I do like. And then people start building off of that once horrible idea, just to get to where we need to go.
Right.
And to my detriment, I never told my bosses that I was doing that. So I probably did look like the idiot. But inside, I was okay with it because I knew it got us as a team closer to where we needed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, a lot of it is just how you carry yourself, right? So
Yeah.
I went back and I had to finish my degree at night later in my career, which I did. But I was still living in New Hampshire at the time, and I was down to like the last couple of classes that I needed, and I had to go to different. I went to Franklin Pierce, and it had
Mm,
satellite campuses, and there's nothing in New Hampshire close to each other. It's a bunch of country up there. And so if
yeah.
you had to go to another campus, it was an hour drive. And so
Yeah.
I would leave work and I would drive to this class. And I can't remember what the class was, but the professors were typically people like you and me that were experienced professionals that were doing some extra stuff. They were either wanted to give back, wanted to make some extra money, wanted to do both. And I took this class because I had to have it for my degree. My degree is in finance. And the guy that taught it was a retired sheriff. And for whatever reason, he really did not like me.
Mm,
Um, and I can't remember why, but it was very obvious. And so I'm hustling. I leave work. I drive all the way across the state. I barely make it to class on time. I look like, the opening scene of Tommy Boy where he runs in right as the test gets set down on his desk.
great,
And
great reference, by the way.
in that, well, that movie's an all-time classic, by the way. If you haven't seen
No,
Tommy
no
Boy,
doubt.
watch it immediately. Um,
After
uh,
this show.
yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. Um, and the assignment, everyone at some point during the semester has to give an impromptu 2 minute speech on a topic that he picks right then. And
Mm,
so he pulls a paper clip out of his desk and says, "Today's your day. Here's your topic. You got to talk about this paper clip for 2 minutes. Go." And so I stood up and said, so the paperclip was invented in 1463 by Franciscan monks. The original paperclips were actually made out of bones from, I can't remember, I said something. And so I go on this 2 minute soliloquy and I set it down after it was done. I set it down on his desk and you could tell he was just pissed because he thought he had me. And
Yeah.
I went and sat back down and the person sitting next to me said, "Man, you got so lucky that you knew so much about paper clips." And he gave. I said, Everything I just said was made up. I don't know if a
Yeah.
single word of it was true, including my name." And they're like, "You got
Right.
to be kidding me. You were so convincing." I said, "That's how it works. If you can present yourself with authority, most people will listen to you. If you say it with
No doubt.
conviction, most people will
No,
listen to you." Now, I'm not advocating for that. Like, you really should know what you're talking about, but it helped me out of a jam in that situation because he was trying to make me look like a dumbass, and I don't need any help looking like a dumbass. I do just fine on my own. Thank you very much.
yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great story. That's a great story. But you're so right in terms of just having that, creating that presence.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of different ways you can create that presence. Some of it could be natural in terms of your 6'5" and built and long legs, or whatever the scenario is, right? You have a physical presence, and a lot of people are gifted with that. Other ways is just by speaking with that authority, with that confidence, and knowing what you say is going to resonate with people who are listening. So it's just it's funny. I think back to myself 20, 30 years ago, and to think of what myself might have thought seeing me today is wild to me, because I was very shy and I was very kind of quiet. I wouldn't speak up in meetings, by and large anyway. And to one day just something clicked. But I remember, I told you I started speaking in pharmaceuticals. Well, I was in the pharmaceutical industry for about 9 years. And my first year, when that story happened, it was my last year. But that first year, I was given an assignment the night before at another district meeting. And we were presented with these little books. They were literally, this wide and this. So they were just packed with information. My boss goes to me, goes, "Hey, look, I want you to give a presentation tomorrow on these." I think it was like 2 or 3 pages. And I'm like, "Yeah, piece of cake, right?" And so I remember, looking over the stuff. Number one, I was still new to the industry, so a lot of it was Greek to me. I still couldn't figure it out. And then number two, I was like, okay, how do I do this? How do I present, in front of other people? And I remember the next day, I'm going to pick up my phone here, and I was like, so as you could see here on page, 32 in the second paragraph, it says this. And I was basically reading the material. It was horrible.
Oh yeah.
But it's just interesting to know where you came from to where you are today, and just seeing the differences and growth. It can be a beautiful thing.
I love that. And it applies in all aspects of life, right? So
Oh yeah,
my wife and I have 3 sons, and I coached a lot of their sports when they were
hmm
growing up. I was an athlete and blah, blah, blah. I love teaching. I love coach. I love it. I absolutely love coaching. Um, but the very first practice I ever ran was a baseball practice for like 7 and 8 year olds.
mm,
And I set it up. So it was probably, if it wasn't the worst, it was one of the top 5 worst practices in organized sports history. It was a terrible, nobody learned anything. It was chaos. I set it up like it
sure,
was a Division 1 college practice, and it was a fucking nightmare.
yeah,
Um, and so I had a parent and one of the other coaches come up to me after the practice, like, "Hey, we want to talk to you." I'm like, "So if you want to tell me that practice sucked, go ahead. I already know that. But like, if you want to get your 2 cents in, go ahead and do it." Like, "No, we
sure,
just wanted to make sure you knew it sucked." I'm like, "Oh yeah, it was terrible. I know exactly that it was terrible. Totally got it." And I am an excellent coach. Um, And if money was no object, if I had, billions of dollars in the bank and I wanted something to do, I'd probably coach college baseball or college hockey, not pro, but college. Like I would love
Sure.
to do that for a full-time gig. And so that's from where I started, that's where I wound up. And it's like coaching is not the same as playing. There's a reason that Wayne Gretzky didn't make it as a hockey coach, or Ted Williams didn't make it as a baseball coach, or
Right.
insert phenomenal Tom Brady's not a football coach, whatever. Pick your sport. It's not the same to be an excellent player as it is to be an excellent coach. In fact, most of the legendary coaches in any sport were not good professional players, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it goes back to the old saying, those who can do, those who can't teach, right?
Yep.
And so, like I said, I just played a couple of years in the college, baseball wise, and yeah, I could play a little bit. And I too was part of the 35 and over wooden bat league. I played in that actually for 20 seasons, so that was a blast. And I've coached a little bit in my time too, and same thing with like training people. When you coach, you do the same thing. You just different topic, different subject matter. But to see that, to see a kid, in the case of coaching, get it and then be able to apply it, it's so powerful. The same thing if you have your own kids. I have two girls, you have three boys, right? When your kids are growing up and you teach them something, and again, you just see that they understand. It's like, yes, I'm great at this parenting stuff. Bring on the next problem child. I got him.
Exactly. I'm Montessori's got nothing on me. I got this all figured
That's
out now.
right.
Right? Oh, totally. So you offer and coach and teach on stress management too. Talk a little bit about that. What's your approach on stress management? Because I think people underestimate the amount of stressors that they have in their life and the impact that
Sure.
has on them.
Yeah. So I'm a certified stress management coach, and for me, the first thing that's so vitally important is understanding where that person is coming from. So we hear the word stress and you think, oh, somebody's really, uptight and they're really, nervous or anxious. And that's all probably true. But like everything else, it's about understanding the why. And once you understand the why, then you're able to formulate, a plan of action to help alleviate that. And in a lot of cases, Joe, it's just having somebody different to talk to that makes
Mm,
people feel better. Beyond that, it's helping people, for me anyway, to once I understand the problem, to see the problem, quote unquote, for what it is. And then ultimately, I'll dive back into perspective. And that's not to diminish, their feelings and their thoughts about the given situation, but it's to help them be better able to handle, those situations and to be successful at overcoming them. And those problems, again, I'll tell people, look, I get why you use that word. There's an opportunity. And I'll also tell people, look, especially when there's things like deadlines coming up and people are like, oh, I have to have this done by this date. And if I don't, I'm going to be off here. And then if I'm off there, I'm not going to have it done by the actual deadline day. Right. And they kind of get all tied up. And you know this, when you're stressed, you have a tendency to see things right here. Excuse my hand in front of my face, but right up close. You can't see anything else that's around you. But when you step back and you have that perspective on what else is out there, it kind of, number one, helps relieve it. But number two, what I always like to tell people, or one of the things I like to tell people, is to think with the end in mind.
mm,
And what I mean by that is to see yourself, and let's take that scenario where there's a report due, right? To see yourself at the end of that presentation you have to make on this report, seeing people in the room with you nodding, in approval. See them when you sit back down, patting you on the back, right? To feel, again, feeling and the emotion, to feel that release after you're done. And to see yourself walking out of that room and just feeling on top of the world, because that while it wasn't easy, it was a challenge that you met and you met head on. And by thinking with the end in mind, what that does is it allows you, as you're going through the challenges, to realize, this is frustrating. But you know what? I already know how this is going to turn out.
Mm.
So even though I'm going through this right now, I'm going to get through it because here's what the result is going to be. So when you have that mindset, and again, it dives back to mindset, dives back to the way you think about things. But when you have that mindset, right, it kind of helps you breathe. Maybe not 100% where you want to be, but it allows you, instead of being here, things to be out here a little bit and to see and to be a little more calm about the given situation. So again, the first thing is always about understanding what it is that is giving them this angst and this anxiety and this stress, and then formulating a plan from there.
Yeah, I love that. The perspective is so important. And it's so easy for us to get wrapped up in our own little world and kind of forget the bigger picture. And when I say the bigger
Yeah,
picture, it's not just ourselves, but like, for example, if you make, I can't remember what the number is, it's somewhere around $45,000 in the United States, you are in the top 1% of income earners in the entire world. The
crazy. Yeah,
world of
yeah,
9 billion people, you're in the top 1%.
yeah.
So what's that?
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah. So what's that make you? The top 900 million? Is that 1%? 90 million.
Uh,
You're in the top 90 million, something like that, whatever it
sure.
is. Anyhow, um, that's crazy. That's
Yeah,
crazy. There are literally billions of people that would trade places with you, and you're
yeah,
bitching about something. What are you doing? Like, you've
yeah,
got it pretty good. I got it. There's like Bill Gates has problems. Jeff Bezos has problems. Elon Musk has problems. Having a
yeah,
bunch of money does not insulate you from having problems. It's just one of the problems they have is not, hey, can I pay the rent this month? Or do I have enough to
sure.
buy groceries? Or can my kid go to the college that they want to? Or whatever, right? It's not
Yeah,
money that's their problem, but they got problems just like everybody
yeah.
else does. And you got
Well,
to compartmentalize those.
yeah, oh, absolutely. And to your point, look, I don't live in a huge house, right? It's not like we have acres and acres of property, and it's not like people drive by and say, "Ooh, wow, look at that house," right? But in talking about perspective, hey, you know what? I have a solid roof over my head. I have windows and doors that work and lock. I have air conditioning. And again, to your point about the 1% and the 45,000, most people in the world don't have what I have, right? Or don't have what you have. So, when you think about it in terms of global kind of a view, holy mackerel, you have a lot. I have a lot, and I'm just so thankful for it. For it all. Is it ultimately? Do I maybe want some more? Yeah, sure. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, provided you don't let it ruin everything else that you do have, or ruin that thought process. So yeah, perspective in everything, right? We talked about it, I think, in 3 different scenarios. Perspective is just so important.
Yeah, and like the single biggest advantage or benefit or thing I'm grateful for, let's just call it that, is my family. Like I have been married to an awesome
Absolutely.
woman for 33 years. Like I am on house money. I've been on house money for a long time as it
Yeah, you and me
comes,
both.
you know, like I'm in a relationship that most people are never in, and like one that's as good as the one that I'm in, and I've been in it for 33 years. Like I am so far, I could lose for the rest of my life and still walk out of the casino with a bunch of money, you know.
Sure, sure.
And it's easy to think when things don't go the way you want them to, or you don't get your bonus or whatever, right? Insert financial issue or material issue here.
Yeah.
Life is entirely about and worth living because of relationships and experiences. And
Oh yeah.
very easy to lose perspective on that.
Yeah, yeah. And think about health especially is another thing. I'm not a tall guy. I like to be, about 6 feet, 6'2". I'm 5'8" on a good day, right? So I'm not this big hulking presence, when I stand up on a stage. But you know what? I can stand on the stage, right? I have legs that work and work properly. I have arms. I obviously have a voice, right? Um, I have eyes to see and ears to hear, etc. And that sounds like yeah kind of stuff, but hold it. Just slow down for a second. Look around and observe life, because you'll see that a lot of people don't have those things, right? Probably not. Yeah, they probably don't not have all of them, right? But one or two things that they don't
Sure.
have, you do, and be thankful for that. And again, when you live, and we kind of go in a different direction a little bit, but when you live with that attitude of gratitude, right, for things that you do have, you realize a couple things. One, you're a lucky son of a gun, man. You're you're very very fortunate. Number one, and number two, it just changes your overall outlook on life and puts you in that kind of, I don't know, sunnier disposition and just feeling great about where you are in life and the things that you do have. So again, there's that word again, perspective, right, and how you look at it.
Totally. It's one of my favorite anecdotes I use to prove the point. So, two little boys share a birthday and they're led into separate rooms, but in each room, there's a huge pile of horse manure. And the first boy starts whining and complaining. It's my birthday. This is awful. Where's my present? I'm in this room that smells. There's a bunch of horse manure in here. And then you go to the other room, and the other kid, as soon as he goes in, he's furiously digging through the horse manure with his hands. And they're like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Hey, with all that manure, there's got to be a pony in there somewhere." Right. So it's all a matter of perspective, is how you look at
Yeah.
it. And there's been so many people who've overcome such horrible things and horrible experiences. I just don't see how anyone can look at that and go, "Man, I've kind of lucked out here. My stuff's not so bad."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even take like day to day lives. There are always those stories out there where somebody's just experienced something just horrific, and it's like, oh my gosh, my worst enemy. I hope and pray that never happens to them,
Mm,
right? But take day to day life and slow it down and realize that, hey, you know what? Yeah, maybe it's not the nicest car overall, or it's not the newest car, but it gets me from point A to B. I don't have to ride my bike to work. I don't have to take a bus. I don't have to walk in the rain or in the snow or in the heat or the cold, right? Again, that perspective of being appreciative for what you have versus all the things that you think you need just opens a lot of eyes, and honestly, it opens a lot of doors for people once they adopt that attitude.
yeah. Yeah. Totally love that. How do you, what are some of the corporate clients? I'm not looking for names or anything, but like, who are your
Yeah,
customers? Who uses your services?
yeah. By and large, small, mid-sized companies. I work with nonprofits. I've worked with government agencies. Done some work for associations as well. Um, so really, it's really kind of vast. Going back to what I said earlier about being in a network meeting and having your 30 seconds. One of the things that a lot of networking groups are like, who is your ideal client? And
Mm,
I'm like, I don't have one answer.
yeah.
It's really multiple, because I'm fortunate enough, to have different experiences that allow me to work in several different industries and different size businesses and different types of organizations. So yeah, I mean, I think it's somewhat vast anyway in terms of people and businesses that I look to do and work with. Um, in terms of that individual and one-on-one coaching that I do, I really enjoy working with leaders. But what I say to those leaders also is, hey, think about who's that one or two people in your office that they had the education, they're intelligent, and you knew from day one they were just going to knock it out of the park. But here they are a year or two later into their career, and they're kind of just, middling, kind of middle of the road. those are the people I like working with, because those are the people who have so much more. I mean, as everybody does, but those are the people in particular, with that education, with that knowledge base, that have so much more, and then understanding what it is that's holding them back, and then to build them up. And that falls back to that confidence thing we were talking about earlier. But to be able to build them up and become, yeah, not to sound old school in the Army here, be all that they can be, right? But yeah, you always know, and for most people it's the case, there's always more inside of you. And sometimes having that different voice, even if I'm saying exactly what the boss is saying, right or wrong, kind of like being a coach, right? When you're a coach, I'm sure you've had countless moms and dads come up to you and say, I don't get it. I say the exact same thing you say. For me, it's falling on deaf ears. But for you, you're a genius, and it's the first time you ever heard it. And what I tell people is like, look, I may or may not know more about baseball or this business, but right or wrong, I'm seen as the quote unquote expert, right? Or I'm seen as the coach. And with that comes that, instant respect. And I say instant, you really have to earn it, build up to that, but it comes with the respect to start out with. And, even though we're saying the same things, sometimes it takes that different voice or different anecdote just to find that little switch, that's inside of us all, to kind of flip it and make that person more successful and more positive in what it is that they're doing.
Yeah, and I think some of it too is they're willing to listen because of people are funny in that we put so much uh, gravitas into like positions of authority or credentials or
Yeah,
those kind of things, and when you stop and think about it, it really doesn't mean anything in a lot of instances. I always use like I have three sisters, and I was talking to them years and years and years ago, and I said half of all doctors are below average. Well, that's just true. Like it's just math.
yeah,
And two of them freaked out. They're like, "How can you be so dismissive of doctors?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "Those people go to school and they learn a ton of stuff." And I'm like, "True." And half of them are below average. Like half of bricklayers are below average.
sure.
Half of
Yeah,
ballerinas are below average. That's how it is.
yeah,
That's just the math. But just because someone has uh, gone through that education doesn't mean they've absorbed everything. Doesn't mean they apply it in the same way. And you got to be just kind of I don't know if skeptical is the right word, but you got to think about it, right? And
yeah,
the fact that you've been in business for so long and you've got so many customer testimonials, that's got to be a really good thing to be able to point to and say, I'm not faking it here. Like I've got lots of
yeah.
people that'll tell you things were better when I left than they were when I got there.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly a source of pride for me, as it is with a lot of people. I'll tell you a quick story. It kind of ties into your doctor story a little bit. I had a client that um, they have, as part of their team, a lot of former CEOs, a lot of former vice presidents of big industries, and I was brought in to talk about effective communication. And I'm saying to myself, this was like probably the one time that I was super, super nervous, because
Mm.
I'm saying, what am I going to teach these people? These people have far more vast experience than I've ever had. And I'm coming in and so the day comes, I meet people. Yeah, they're all very friendly and nice. And finally my time gets up to give my presentation. And I'm saying to myself, okay, I'm going to know in about 2 minutes if this is going to be my worst experience ever or one of my best. And I said something, and I said something in the meeting. It was part of my presentation. And to me, I'm thinking, wow, this is so basic, but this is what I planned for. Let me say it. And after I said it, I looked out at everybody, and it was like I said something that was just like so ingenious and so out of this world. And I remember at that time, I actually laughed out loud because I was just so stressed and so nervous about it. Right. I didn't follow my own advice in terms of thinking with the end in mind, but I was so uptight and concerned about it that once I saw that expression on their face, like I said, the most intelligent thing ever uttered, I just laughed. I just let out this little chuckle because it was such a relief. And from there, you know, um, everything else went well, and it was a positive experience. But the point being, even when people have those experiences or have that education, it doesn't mean that they're good or as knowledgeable as they want to be or need to be in other aspects of what it is that they do. So thankfully, like I said, that went well. And to your point, about doctors or credentials, all the respect in the world I have for people like that who are very well educated. They put forth the time, the energy, and the effort to kind of grow and to be better at what they do. But as somebody coming into a situation and working with those people, it doesn't mean that I and everybody else listening still cannot add value to a given situation.
Yeah, for sure. And look, I say the same thing about doctors and lawyers. There's a reason it's called a practice. I'm just saying. It's not called a business, it's called a practice.
There you go.
So how do people engage with you? If someone's interested in using some of your services, what's the best way for them to go about that?
Yeah, well, I'm fairly active on social media, so there's always that outlet to reach out to me there. You contact me through my website, which is creatingourreality.com. And I told you earlier that I go by the moniker of the smart guy. So my email address is the smart guy at creatingourreality.com. But in terms of attracting new business, it's not like I'm going to meet you and 5 minutes later we're doing business. I've come to understand doing this now for over 11 years. It's all about relationships. And it's all about building up that trust. And it's all about, helping that person feel like in their role, when they're putting themselves on the line by hiring you, you give that person back everything and more that they're expecting. So again, it's nothing that happens overnight. I realize that, but I always look forward to meeting and interacting with new people. And if nothing else, forming a friendship. And if there's ever any way, I tell people this all the time. They think I'm coming at it from a money angle, but I'm really not. But if there's ever anything I could do to help somebody, I always encourage them to reach out, and I'll do everything I can to do that. Hopefully, it
Yeah.
leads to business, but if not, that's okay too.
You just never know where it's going to lead. That's exactly right. And you're
Yeah,
better
yeah,
off meeting people and having a bigger circle of influence because you might be able to connect two people that can help each other. And
sure.
who knows down the road, they might be able to help you. Like you just don't know. It's better to do that than not do it though, for sure. We haven't talked about your book yet. You published a book.
I have. Yeah, actually, had a publisher who, after, I have one of those stories where after everybody and their uncle, kind of rejected me online, for my book. It's called The Power of Giving and Gratitude, A Path to Creating Your Reality. But after, all these rejections, and I had everything done and ready to go, I found this one company, Ozark Mountain Publishing, out in the publishing capital of the world, Arkansas, and and they had this process. Most of the other processes were, hey, send us a chapter online, we'll check it out, we'll let you know what we think, and we'll go from there. They were like, no, mail us what you have. In 6 months, we'll get back to you and let you know. I'm like, so at that point, I had nothing to lose. I just about given up on the idea of having it published by a publisher and not having to go through the self-publishing realm.
Hmm.
But you know what? 6 months later, I got an email. They said they were interested, and it kind of snowballed from there. This is the look of it. Hopefully, it's not too much of a glare. The Power of Giving and Gratitude.
Yep.
And I know what you're saying, looking at it from the side view. Anthony, who has all that time to read all that material? Well, it's about 100 pages, but I do promise you it is filled with some some great stories, some great anecdotes. I dive into it's not just a feel good book about, hey, if you do this, you're going to feel really good about yourself. It's also, pretty well researched in terms of there are psychological and scientific studies that are referenced in the book that point to just how powerful giving to others is, and being involved in a giving type of an atmosphere, as well as being thankful, like we talked about earlier, for the things that you have in life. So it's available, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You get it hard copy. You can get it. You can download it. You can listen to it in your car. But I hope you'll take time. Your listeners will anyway to check it out and see if it's something that interests them.
Yeah. What made you pick that topic? Why'd you narrow down to that?
Well, I kind of feel that I was always on the gratitude path in life. Thankful for what I had, but there's a lot of books written about gratitude. There's also a lot of books written on giving, but what I did was kind of just button them up against each other, not in a confrontational way, but just in a way that shows people that they actually kind of work together. And so I went with that title. And like everything else, you go through different titles, like you go through different business names or monikers and all that stuff. Salty Ginger, right? Maybe that was your first choice, but maybe not, right? And ultimately, between myself and the publisher, that's what we decided would be best.
Nice. And the did you think about writing the book on other topics, or did you always know that when you went to write a book, did you know it was going to be about gratitude?
No, yeah, I definitely had different topics in mind. I was like, hey, do I go with a business book? Because I talk to businesses, that would make like a good tie-in. That makes sense. And for whatever reason, this was the one that most resonated with me at the time. Currently, I haven't started it yet, but I just did the research on what it takes. I'm in the process of writing what I hope will lead to another book, and it's actually going to be a white paper on the aspect of creating your reality, how you go about it. And there's just so much research out there that ties into mindset, that ties in our untapped and unlimited abilities to do things in life. And really, the whole reason why I chose this path in terms of a company was to have that impact on people. It's you talk about dreams and goals and ideas and all. Well, mine is to impact billions. How do I do that? I'm working on it, right? One person at a time, as they say, right? And I have some other steps along the way that I hope to take. But in the meantime, I think that'll also be something that can prove valuable in terms of helping people and making a difference. So so that's coming. It'll be a little while, maybe the next 6 months or so, maybe a little longer, but something I'm working on now too.
That's awesome. And just for the listeners, real quick, we'll include all the links. So Anthony's email,
Sure.
his website, link to his book in the show notes. So you don't have to go far to look for it. Just scroll down to the show notes and the links will all be there. So you can get in touch with him and or purchase the book or whatever you want to do. You won't have to look very far. So one of the things I always do, Anthony, is I kind of open the floor up. So I ask a lot of questions, et cetera, et cetera. But is there anything we haven't talked about that you think is important? Or is there any questions I haven't asked you think are worth us discussing while we're here in front of the audience?
Wow. Yeah, that's great, Joe. Thank you. I got to be honest. You were very efficient in terms of what we covered. I feel very fortunate to have been part of the show and able to talk about my business and being able to deliver keynote addresses at conferences and for companies, to be able to do that work, in terms of maybe topics, things that I kind of specialize in. Well, obviously, it's mindset is first and foremost. Giving and gratitude, as you could tell, from the book. But I also dive deeply. I actually developed my own leadership program. It's called XWE, Execute with Excellence, and it's a leadership training program that I would go in and work with not only existing leaders but individuals who've been identified by their company as emerging leaders to kind of help them get a head start on taking that next step. So very, very, very proud of that. But I also speak on a reference earlier, communication, effective communication, speaking amongst, generations. I had this one workshop and talk I conduct. I call it CFCF, the four pillars to next level achievement. And it's about having clarity. First C. First F is focus. Second C is confidence. And that last F is faith. And now, with faith, just to touch on that briefly, I mentioned earlier, I'm a spiritual guy, and that's kind of just, my beliefs. And like everybody else has their beliefs, and I think that's wonderful. But faith to me in that CFCF is not just about maybe, God or whoever it is, whatever deity you may worship. Faith is also about having faith in your teammates. And faith is about having faith in the fact that this other person, who's on that team is going to do their part and do it effectively. Faith can be in the process itself. So when I say faith, it's not, people go right to religion. It's not just about, religion or spirituality. In fact, I just barely even touch on that. But it's more about faith in the process, in the program, and it's faith in each other, in the company, in your message, and just goes, in a lot of different directions. So yeah, CFCF, four pillars to next level achievement. It's really about a process, and it's about being able to execute, on a plan from point A all the way to Z, and just being able to stay focused along the way and confident and faithful, etc. But something I really love talking about, because a lot of times when we're involved in our own company or as part of another company, we do our jobs and we do them day to day, and we get through the day, and hey, you know what? I really need to do this, but I have to do that. And it's just kind of just here and there and getting work done. Whereas, something like what I'm talking about actually establishes a process that people can utilize and kind of go forward with individually, but as well as a group, as a team, and as a company. So that's something I'm very, very passionate about. Joe talked obviously a lot about perspective, stress management. Pretty much any topic that is out there. Here's the thing about me. If there's something I don't feel confident about, I am not going to sell you a line of like, oh, yeah, no problem. I've done this all the time, piece of cake, right? No, I don't want to embarrass myself. I
Yeah,
think
right.
that's the bigger fear. Is embarrassing myself. But the fact of the matter is that's not helping anybody out. That's, if you're truly into doing whatever it is that you do to try to make a difference, act with integrity, right? Be honest about things. And if I say no to something, I'm going to do my best to put you up with the right person who can help on that given topic. So if anybody wants to have just an initial conversation, just to kind of get to know me better, I'd certainly welcome the opportunity. Please contact me, through those sources that are, in the show notes, like you said, and I'd love to have a conversation.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You did a great job. Really appreciate you sharing your perspective and your wisdom and all of the experience that you've got in kind of coaching and helping people develop their mindset to make themselves better, to push themselves to excel. And the thing I like about it is it's agnostic. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You should be
Right.
doing your best at it, right? And that's what you're coaching. And I love that.
Always. So thanks, Joe, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be on your show. It's easy just having this dialogue. We don't know each other, but I feel like I've known you for years already. So hats off to you regarding that, and thanks so much for the opportunity again to be on your show.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words. When you wrap up that other project, give us another shout. We can have you back on and talk through that as well.
I'd appreciate that. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. Have a great night.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
So there we go, guys. Anthony continues the streak of having awesome guests on Salty Ginger Talk. Did a great job, really, really well educated in the topics that he speaks on. He's been in that business for over a decade now, had 25 years of corporate experience before then. So, a wealth of knowledge, wealth of experience, wealth of information available for you to connect with, whether it's on the personal level or on the business level. And got a link to his book in the show notes. We've got a link to his website in the show notes. We've got his email in the show notes if you want to get in touch with him. So, really appreciate him coming on and doing such a great job, sharing all of his insights with our audience and with us. I love the conversation. Like we said at the end there, happy to have him back on when he wraps up his next project. And we look forward to speaking with Anthony again. So James puts it up right over there every day. Head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All our podcast episodes are available there. Links to all the social media accounts are available there. We've got a newsletter we publish every weekday that you can subscribe to on our website. And please like, share, comment, subscribe to our podcast, whatever platform you consume it on. Super helpful for us. We're going to keep bringing you tips to build a purposeful life. We're going to keep bringing guests on that can help you do it, not only through their experiences, but through the programs and processes and techniques that they have developed that they share for you entirely for free right here on Salty Ginger Talk. You don't want to miss all of those great options, those great opportunities. Make sure you catch the next episode. We will see you there.